Welcome back. It's Michael Rogers. Welcome to Bodywork Boxing. And tonight, I want to talk about Deontay Wilder. Last night, I had the privilege to actually sit down and watch an interview with Deontay Wilder by the one and only Brian Custer. Salute Brian Custer. Man, Brian Custer's interviews are like crack. They're like crack. Brian Custer always asks the tough questions. He has a rapport. He has a persona. You know, he asks the questions that all the fans want the answers to. And he just make you feel so comfortable. And he's very professional. And you can see the grind and the hustle. But man, when I say it was a privilege to actually get to hear from Deontay Wilder straight from the horse's mouth, changed my perspective on a whole lot of things. But before I get into it, let me give you an example of something, right? Excuse me. You know how you can go to a spot, right, and you know that they got some fire wings, and you know they fries is just bussin', you know? And you know, like, if you go there, right, and you sit down and you have them, like, right then and there, it's you know, they're going to be busting, right? But if you get them to go, you put them in that container and you take them home, if you get them fresh out, hot out the grease, then, you know, when you open it up, some of that styrofoam might be melted, you know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing on the chicken, but the styrofoam is melted and you eat the chicken and you got, like, this aftertaste in your mouth. You're like, dang, the wings is busting, but, man, you got to eat them drinks right then and there. It's like, let's just say if you got Stars, because a lot of us got a lot of different apps, right? But let's just say you got an app like Stars, where you only use Stars to watch something like Power, right? But then you got like a Fire Stick, right? So you could actually easily, instead of paying for the app, a lot of people go to the Fire Stick. A lot of people go, instead of, you know, using Netflix, they use the Fire Stick. So it might be something on Netflix, you can go there, right? And you can watch the joint instantly. But if you got a Fire Stick and you use the Fire Stick and you go to one of these, you know what I'm saying, one of these little torrents, you know, and watch it, then sometimes it's buffering. Sometimes it might not be available as soon as the original product is there on the Netflix or the Stars or whatever. And you got to deal with pausing it and backing it up and rewinding. It's like, you could just go straight to Netflix, right? So the experience is ruined. Like, some movies might have been fucked up because you watched them, you know, in low quality. Some songs, you know what I'm saying, might not have touched you because the quality in which you heard it, in which it was delivered, was not good. I think a lot of that is just like the presentation of Deontay Wilder. You know, he was so transparent last night. When I watched it, it's like me watching it last night. You know what I'm saying? I watched it last night. But he was so transparent in that interview. I was like, man, I had no idea. I didn't even know this man. I didn't know Deontay Wilder. None of us knew Deontay Wilder, but like, some people would say, hey, the way he talked, you know, when he talk and he's being all profound and loquacious, you know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, some of it might be over some people's heads, right? But it was a point in time in that interview, I think it was about 15 minutes into the interview, it's like all that went away. And the real Deontay Wilder came out. And the real Deontay Wilder was cool as fuck. The real Deontay Wilder was transparent. He was reasonable. He laughed. He joked. At one point in time, he told Brian Custer, man, you gonna make me roll one up. You know what I'm saying? Like, but he was asked the tough questions and he handled it so well. He addressed everything. And one of the things I realized, right, is there's only a few places where you can go and really hear about Deontay Wilder, right? It's not until he come out and he goes onto like a Brian Custer or somewhere, you know, where like an interview like that, I think it was like 45, 52 minutes long. That's why I'm not even going to cite any quote. With so many quotes, like one of the ones when he said, AJ sold out faster than Michael Jackson. You know what I'm saying? I was laughing, like, I was like, man, this is the Deontay Wilder that everybody be talking about and this and this and that. You know what I'm saying? This is that Deontay Wilder, but guess what? A lot of people get to know you through the boxing lens, as boxing fans. They don't get to know you like family. And then even in the interview, Deontay Wilder was like, you know, they see boxing, but then that's my personal life. And the way he said it was like, yes, that's your personal life. But on YouTube and boxing, when we're talking about boxing things, somebody could have a criticism when we comparing apples to apples, like competition to competition, better defense, better jab, better head movement, power, speed, agility, athleticism. When we're talking about that, if it's a criticism or if it's something that's not always 100 or always a 10, like if you get a C in anything, then it's a personal attack. And I understand why, because the people that are actually putting information out are like family. And you know, if you ever want to get information from somebody and you go to a family member, you're going to get, if they feel like it's offensive, it's going to be, that's how it's going to come off, as offensive. If there's anything, it's like, what you mean? You better get this straight. Is this real business? But from the lens of a lot of people online, as real boxing fans, sometimes we just want to talk boxing. And I think sometimes when the conversation get off into politics and this and this and that, and people speaking for you, then people get to run. And so the connotation with Deontay Wilder, just like Devin Haney, or, you know, just like Bud, like the connotation associated with it gets so far removed because the people presenting information are so opinionated. Why? They can't hear it from the horse's mouth. If you ever heard that Brian Custer interview, man, I think the last interview I heard from Brian Custer that was off the chain was the Jamel Charlo interview. But if you have not heard that Brian Custer interview, it will let you know the real Deontay Wilder. He answers all the questions. He's utterly transparent. He tell you he ain't ducking no smoke. He telling you he understand the business. He actually gives from the horse's mouth that AJ ducked him. We get to hear these things. We not family, we boxing fans. You know, we just expect that whenever something happens in or outside the ring, you know what I'm saying, those of us who tend to stick to the things that happen inside the ring, we want to judge you in that light. You know, with all the Fury talk and all this and this and that, you know, it's a negative connotation with the Fury stuff. You know, I hear a lot of people talking about how, you know, if Deontay Wilder should have the stance that he has, in that Tyson Fury should be grateful. And I'm like, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, Tyson Fury should be grateful. He extended the olive branch. You know, some of us question that. You know, some of us question the whole, you know, after the Chief, you get all your answers in the Brian Custer interview. You get all your answers in the Brian Custer interview. So you understand why he didn't push forward with the allegations on it. So in hindsight, after this interview, we know. We got the mindset. Our whole thing is a lot of people online don't know that. So when they go to ask a question about it, it's like a personal attack. It's like an indictment. It's like, shut the fuck up, and your mother, and all this other dumb shit that come along with it when people just want to address the topic. You know, it's not an indictment on Wilder as a person. It's about boxing and the business of boxing as it relates to Deontay Wilder. And I think a lot of Wilder's shine and luster, it gets overshadowed by all the packaging. You know, that styrofoam that I talked about on the chicken wings, or, you know, the fact that you might go to a Fire Stick to get the information, all that buffering and all that extra stuff and skipping and having all of that extra stuff surrounding it overshadows Deontay Wilder's light. And his greatness get overshadowed. All the comparisons, if you compare him to anybody else, then they ain't shit. And this is the same thing happened with the Devin Haney fans. When it's all about boxing, and the people that's delivering the information make it personal, but it's really all about boxing. A lot of people admire a strong black man, look like an action figure. You think people don't want their bodies like that? People don't train and aspire and look. Yeah, people salute. Yeah, like when people look at Deontay Wilder, they don't look at Deontay Wilder and say, But if you're talking about boxing, when we talk about everything from training to conditioning to the X's and O's, We got to look at Wilder comprehensively, so when those talks go on, people are going to have valid opinion that 20% might have a question mark or something that they don't understand or know. Or somebody might not give you a 99. Somebody might give you a 79. Somebody might give you an 85. Somebody might give you a 93. But we be dealing in absolutes nowadays. Like absolutely the hardest puncher in history. And then when you get compared to Tank, it'd be the packaging. Because you're getting compared to Tank when the subject of power come up. But when people talk about Tank, they say, oh man, it ain't all about power. But then when they talk about you, it's like, man, he got enough power. It's just an oxymoron. And then they say, oh no, it ain't the same power as Tank because, he knocking out little motherfuckers. And it's like, well, if Tank was Deontay Wilder size, somebody might say, then how much power, like if they were the same size, because that's really pound for pound talk. And when people say, oh man, he knocked out everybody, it's like, well, it was 2 fights where he lost. So do you count those? Because it was 2 fights that Tank didn't knock somebody out, but he didn't get knocked out either. That's not a shot at anybody. That's a fact. And if we're talking about boxing, just like we talk about a Barrios, so we talk about a Sean Porter when he was fighting, or we talk about Errol Spence and how people say, oh man, he got lapses and he dropped his mouthpiece. It's like, Earl don't really get offended by that. He laugh it off. But in the conversation surrounding Wilder, it'd be a lot of personal attacks, man. That interview from Brian Custer showed me a lot. It told me a lot. You hear it straight from the horse's mouth. So I encourage Deontay Wilder to keep doing that. Keep going to those sources where they make you comfortable enough to where you can be transparent and you're comfortable enough and it's the time and you feel relaxed. And I'm not saying all the time, but the people need to hear from Deontay Wilder straight up with the right middleman brokering the deal. Because it's one thing to have your family. I understand when your family talk about you, you know what I'm saying, that should be really in a family setting. But out here in YouTube, like, man, the misrepresentation, you are getting greatly misrepresented, if that's the word, misrepresented. And I think that the light that people could see in the Brian Custer video, it did a lot for me. It answered a lot of questions. I'm not gonna take any old videos down or do anything like that, but it did add to my admiration for Deontay Wilder. I'm man enough to salute another man and say, hey, you doing your thing, man. Just understand that this is the sport of boxing, and when people have boxing conversations, that should not lead into your personal life. It should not lead into all these other, it shouldn't. But when people are having boxing conversations, your family is making it personal, if that makes sense. So I think a lot of people are I talked to some people who I never talked to boxing for, and when your name came up, we kind of shared the same ideals. We see the skill, we know about the dangerous right hand. There are some criticism about, the actual, some of the X's and O's and some of that, but that's not to take away from anything that you ever done. When your family get a hold of that, and they get in front of it, it changes into something else, like it's a personal indictment. If you can separate boxing from your personal life, I think that those kind of conversations need to happen when it comes to Deontay Wilder on YouTube. And that's not happening. You know what I'm saying? Like, you really don't have a lot of haters. You have people that don't want to see a man of your stature in that position. But, that's at the peak of every corporation, at the peak of everything in this country. People don't want to see that kind of imagery. So some of us salute. Some of us just want to, some of us just want to be honest, just like when we move over to Jermell Charlo. If everything is all game when it come to Charlo, or everything is all game when it come to Devin, if everything is all game when it come to Tank, everything is all game when it come to Wild, and I think some of that get lost in translation. So this is my endorsement of the Brian Custer interview. And if you have any questions before you start going back and forth online and debating and getting all riled up over some stuff and the people that's actually presenting information, go watch that interview and just stay tuned for more interviews like that. I think it showed leadership, because I want to see a Brian Custer Tank Davis like ASAP. I want to see a Brian Custer Tank Davis just like that, in the setting just like that, where you can talk freely just like that for about 45 minutes, because Brian Custer's going to ask the tough questions, and it's not going to be taken personally when he do it. And I want to hear Earl Spence, Brian Custer, and I would love to hear Bud, Brian Custer now. So now I got to do a take every time, because this is Custer's crack. Like, them interviews are crack, and it opened up, and it's going to stop a lot of the toxicity that's going on online surrounding certain boxers, because when Brian Custer asks the questions, it's straight up. It's straight up. You get straight up answers. He's going to ask the tough questions. He's going to compliment. He's going to, you know what I'm saying? He's going to give the praise. He's going to state the glory. He's going to ask what the fans want to know. And we get the real spill straight from the horse's mouth, where people can't even speak for you. Anyways, I salute to Deontay Wilder, man. I look forward to hearing more from you. I look forward to the next fight. You know what I'm saying? And it painted you in a whole different light. I'm just going to be honest. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. You know, I would love to get your thoughts about it. You know, anybody that's listening, you know, thanks for subscribing. If you subscribe, thanks for hitting the like button. You know, I welcome all feedback here at Body Work Boxing, where we don't take things for face value. We do that body work.
All right, I believe you, but my Tommy gun don't. Get down on your knees and tell me you love me.
I do what I do, and he knows what I'm about to tell him right now. It's Mr. Keep running your mouth. That's what I do.
I just feel like I'm the champ, and at the end of the day, I'm just a fighting motherfucker. It doesn't matter. Inside, outside, I can just fight. So I just feel like if it gets down to the wire, and we gotta lock it up, I'm out on top.
Hey, look, as you can see how I'm looking, I stay solid. I'm always solid. I stay fuck solid up, man. You know what I'm saying? To the fans and all that.
You gotta jump outside the ring. I'm a fighter. Like I said before, ain't no safety on the clock, so